Oh, hey, remember me? It's been like 2 months. Thanks for sticking around if you did. Today I'm gonna be doing a little catch up and I'm gonna do my January and February wrap up all in one video because I'm so behind. The first book I read in February was Never Stop Shutting Up by Mike Falzone. If you have watched any of his YouTube videos, you can probably guess the kinds of things that are in this book. Stories and anecdotes and just like things about life that are funny, but also very true. Some of it is stuff that he has talked about in YouTube videos before, so some of it I had already heard, but it was really enjoyable and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read in January was A Long Way Down by Nick Hornby. This book tells the story of 4 people who meet at the top of the tallest building in London on New Year's Eve because they're all planning to commit suicide. It kind of just chronicles their stories and what they do to kind of stay alive and how they arrive at that decision. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read is Chasers of the Light by Tyler Knott Gregson. This is a book of poetry, which I don't read a lot of, so it was fun to read something a little bit different. This author is also a photographer, so it's a book of poems all written on a typewriter, but there are also some of the photographs that he's taken as well that go along with some of the poems. It was a really quick read. I really enjoyed a lot of the poems, and I also gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Noggin by John Corey Whaley. This book is kind of a weird one. It follows our main character named Travis, who I believe he was 16 or 17. He was diagnosed with terminal cancer. When he was close to dying, he signed up to do this thing. They freeze his body before he died, and basically said that when they figure out all of the technology, they would reattach his head to another person's body and he would basically get the second chance at life. And when he signed up to do this, you know, he's thinking it's going to be way in the future. The technology developed a lot faster than they originally thought. About 5 years after he agrees to all of this, they do the surgery and it's successful and he has to go back to living his life, and he is still in high school and still in the same like state of mind and everything as somebody who is 17, but all of his friends are in their 20s and like graduating college, and his girlfriend from his first life is engaged to somebody else, and so he's kind of trying to figure out how to deal with all of that and how to just live his second chances at life, basically. I also give this book 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Choose Your Own Autobiography by Neil Patrick Harris. This book is Neil Patrick Harris's memoir, and he basically has written it like one of those choose your own adventure books. So at the end of like each chapter, it'll be like flip here for this kind of story or this kind of story. If you want to hear more about this, flip here, and there are like most of it's true, but there are stories in there that aren't true and you can die. It was really funny and a really interesting way to write a memoir. It was really fun to read. I died, and then I died, and then I just read the rest of the book so that I could read everything. I'd recommend it, especially if you like Neil Patrick Harris. You can learn more about his life. I also give this book 4 out of 5 stars. I then started to read my pick for my TBR jar, which was to read a book that was published the year that you were born. I chose The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I started this book. I was supposed to have it finished in January. I started it in January, but then I got into a bit of a reading slump and did not finish it until February. I don't want to really give much of a summary to this book because I think it's better if you don't really know what happened. It was really enjoyable. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars just because I felt like it was really slow at the beginning and it was really hard for me to get into, but it is really good. I would definitely recommend it. So now we're moving on to my February books. The first book I read was I Was Here by Gail Forman. This I had heard a little bit about on BookTube and decided to pick it up because I thought it sounded interesting, and also I was kind of hearing mixed reviews, so I wanted to have an opinion. This book follows a girl named Cody after her best friend Meg commits suicide. She offers to travel up to her friend's apartment where she was living, and just follows her trying to deal with her friend committing suicide, and you know, all the things that go with that. And there's a little bit of a romance with a boy, which I was not surprised about. Can I just say though how tired I am of young adult books and their romances like always starting with like either the girl and the boy both mutually hating each other, or the girl hating the boy and him just still trying to get her attention. Why does that have to be a thing? I just don't get it. Gail Forman is a great writer. I did enjoy it, but I don't know, it just wasn't like great for me. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was a reread for me, and that is Winter Girls by Laurie Halse Anderson. This is one of my favorite books. It follows a girl named Leah who is anorexic, and her best friend Cassie, who is bulimic, has died. It's a really heavy book. It really captured, at least for me, what it's like to live with an eating disorder. I will say though that if you are in recovery from an eating disorder and you are easily triggered, but this could trigger you, so just be mindful of that if you're thinking about reading it. The next book I read is Binary Star by Sarah Gerard. This is also about an anorexic woman. I'm like looking at my pile of books, realizing that this is all that I just read a bunch of like really heavy books the past couple months. And somebody's probably gonna think there's something wrong with me, but I promise everything's fine. It's a really short book. I read it in a day. It follows an anorexic woman and her boyfriend. Their relationship is not good for either of them. The way it's written is really beautiful. I also gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. No! The next book I read is Women by Chloe Caldwell. It's about a woman in her first relationship with another woman and her kind of exploring her sexuality and all of that. It's a very good read. It's also a really short read, and I think I gave it like 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read in February I can't stop thinking about, and that is All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. This is my favorite book that I've read this year so far. It is about Violet and Finch, who are both seniors in high school. Violet's sister recently died in a car accident that Violet was also in, and she survived, her sister didn't. Finch has struggled with depression for a long time. He basically wakes up every day and decides whether or not he's gonna stay alive. It's just a beautiful, beautiful book about mental illness and people and relationships, and I love it so much. The next book I read in February is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This is the first Neil Gaiman book I've ever read. It is about Nobody Owens. Somebody breaks into his house when he is just a baby and kills his family, but he gets away and crawls into a graveyard, and the ghosts in the graveyard take it upon themselves to raise him and take care of him and protect him from the person who murdered his family. I give it 5 out of 5 stars. The last book I read in February was my TBR jar challenge of the month, which was to read a book with 500 plus pages. So I chose Life After Life by Kate Atkinson. This is a historical fiction novel, the bulk of which takes place in World War II. It follows Ursula. The night she's born, she dies, and then on that same night, she's born and she lives, and she basically dies and comes back to life so many different times. Like, she doesn't really know that it's happening to her. If you like historical fiction, especially about World War II, which is like my favorite kind of historical fiction, I would definitely recommend this. It really kind of explores the effect that all the different choices that we make have on our lives and other people's lives. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So that's all the books that I read in January and February, and I'm gonna go ahead and pull out my TBR jar challenge for March, because it's already March and that's weird. This is still in a comically large jar. Maybe someday I'll get a smaller one, probably not though. Okay, so I got a book set in a different country. I don't know what book I'm gonna pick yet, but I'll definitely be doing that. So bye. Can you guys hear the cats? They stopped. I really hope you heard that because that sounded pathetic.